Welcome to our revision class, GBS 700. So basically, we know by now that this course has two lecturers. There's a qualitative part and the quantitative. So the qualitative is looking at qualitative methods. So anything to do with qualitative designs, etc. Then the other section has to do with quantitative. So this is how last year's paper looks like. Section B is quantitative, where you're going to respond to questions to do with the conceptual framework, an ability to understanding how to identify the variables, independent and dependent variables, coming up with a proposed topic and objectives. And we have a case study here that was given, and we were asked to read through and understand important constructs to do with coming up with research objectives and justifying and having to explain aspects of validity. Okay, so this paper can be simplified as follows. We first look at the concepts that are involved in there. So I will look at the foundations. Let's start with qualitative methods or research, where we're going to look at the foundations of qualitative research. So qualitative research is simply the approach that is used when we're exploring and understanding meanings, experiences, and social realities from the perspective of participants. So unlike quantitative research, in qualitative methods, we are not focusing on numbers. We are actually focusing on the context, the interpretation, the depth. Okay? No wonder your researches or your assignments to do with qualitative, you needed to only look at it and switch your mind to thinking in a qualitative way. So at the core of qualitative research, here researchers want to answer questions like how, why, what. So you're able to tell from the objectives and the questions there that this is a qualitative research. You want to find out how people experience a certain phenomenon. You want to understand why individuals behave in a certain way. You'd want to know the meanings that people attach to certain experiences. So all that is qualitative research. And the key assumption in qualitative research is that reality is not um, objective. It has multiple socially construed perspectives. So this means that a different person may experience the same situation differently. You will give a personal reflection on how the president meant to you in a different way. So the other assumption is that reality is shaped by culture, beliefs, and personal experiences, and there's no one single truth. There are many valid interpretations. So for one particular study, for instance, in education, a teacher may view quality as curriculum incompletion. Another student may view understanding the concept. So in my schooling, I had difficulties with certain lecturers who I deemed dull because no matter how much I studied their course, theirs was to memorize, you know, word for word, even the examples they would give in class, failure to which you were deemed a failure. So I had confrontations. So these are perspectives of realities and assumptions. So in a study of education, like I've said, a teacher may view quality as a complete or completion of a curriculum, whereas a student like me could view understanding concepts, not memorizing word for word. We could also have a perspective where a parent may define examination or passing school, getting straight grades as success. So all these perspectives are valid in reality. So we have um, what we call the constructivist perspective. Um, what does this mean, and what perspective does it hold? So when I'm dealing with these perspectives, we must understand each of them. So I need to simplify them for you. so that you understand, because these ones are often asked and questioned. So we have what we call the constructivist perspective. It is an important approach that is used in qualitative research. It is actually based on the idea that reality is not fixed or objective. Reality is actually socially treated through human interactions. It is experienced through interactions and real experience. So, in other words, people may interpret the world differently depending on their backgrounds. People may experience a relationship and interpret it as a fallacy, a waste of time, because their background is that of what? Of negativity. Those that have read the book, The Psychology of Money, it is a book that is mostly qualitative. It explains how people behave when they have money based on their past experiences. So we are discussing the perspectives that are involved and qualitative approach. So we're just talking about the con constructivist perspective. We're saying that this is a perspective that holds that knowledge is constructed through experiences of interaction. Researchers and participants co-create meanings. So the researcher does not remain fully detached, but he engages with participants. So the key features here are that it emphasizes on what? Interactions. So this constructivist perspective is important in qualitative research. It is based on the idea that reality is not fixed, it's just objective. And the key assumptions are that number one, knowledge is socially constructed, meaning constructivists believe that knowledge does not create an independent outcome, okay, but it is built, it is constructed. Number two, that there are multiple realities that exist, unlike the positivist approach. Here, constructivism actually it argues that there are multiple realities where each individual have their own version of reality. Okay, and these realities are shaped by culture, they're shaped by education and personal experiences. The other assumption is that researchers and participants co-create meaning. So meaning the researchers are not completely separate from the study. So it means that the meaning is developed through interaction between the researcher and the participants. So here, the researcher will listen, interpret, and sometimes may influence the direction of the discussion. The last but not the least assumption is that researcher engagement is very important. So here, the researcher does not remain distant or neutral. Instead, they actively engage with the participants. So this is one of these are the assumptions under which this approach is based. So the key features, they emphasize on interpretation. This constructivist perspective. There's an emphasis of interpretation. So data is not just collected, it must be interpreted. So here, researchers want to try to understand the meaning behind the participants' words or actions or experiences. So it focuses mainly on how and why people think in the way they do. All right. So we're talking about the perspectives, the contract, like contractivist perspective. So the key features that there's an emphasis on interpretation, there's use of open-ended data collection through interviews and discussion. So this approach relies mainly on interactions and flexibility, where you have in-depth interviews, we have focus groups, we have observations. It also holds or um, the focus on participants' viewpoints. So it focuses on the participants' viewpoints. So here the main goal is to understand what perspectives that the participants had. So even when they're interpreting the law, they would want to look at what was the participants thinking. So researchers will prioritize the voices of the participants rather than imposing their own assumptions. So it may help to capture detailed and context-specific information. So this is the perspective that the constructivist um, hold. So, for instance, a researcher who's studying youth unemployment in Zambia, they want to conduct and understand how young people perceive the job opportunities rather than relying on the statistics that we have from Central. They want to know, why are you not employed? Are there opportunities in reality? Okay. So we also have what is called the advocacy or participatory perspective. Advocacy or participatory perspective. And you were looking at qualitative research. So to help us understand last year's paper, we'll just go through and delve into a few principles. So our question of consideration would be question number one, where we're being asked to um, read this case study. Qualitative research assumes that the world is made up of multiple realities socially constructed by different individuals, their views of the same situation. In other words, qualitative approach is one of which the inquirer often make knowledge claims based on the primary contravist perspective, i.e., multiple meanings of an individual's experience, meaning socially and historically constructed with intent of developing a theory, or advocacy stroke participatory perspective, which looks at political or issue-oriented, collaborative, or change-oriented, or both. Simply put, qualitative research investigates the softer side of a phenomenon to explore and to describe, focusing on words, description, concepts, ideas, images, to measure differences between variables and relationships between them. Qualitative data analysis, QDA, involves working with qualitative data, which in many ways may be challenging and time-consuming to analyze and interpret. At the end of the data collection phase, you will likely have pages of text-based or hour upon hour audio working through. You might have subtle nuances of interpretations and discussions that have danced around your mind that you scribbled down in a messy field notes. So you're given this table below here. And from the for running commentary on qualitative research designs and data analysis, you draw the table as shown above and match the research designs with the appropriate data analysis methods. And from the table, explain the sort of data obtained from the designs, phenomenological, evaluation, narrative, and explain how that is analyzed using corresponding analysis methods. So this question came in 2025. It also repeated itself in 2024. So the table was given as follows, but the text was there. So you need to understand this. I'm trying to give you some background information that you'd appreciate. All right, so the advocacy or participatory perspective, it goes beyond just understanding reality. It seeks to change it. So the characteristics here, the focuses on marginalized or disadvantaged groups. So here research aims to empower participants, and participants are actively involved in the research process. So the study often leads to social or policy change. So an example where you're studying women in the informal mining, okay? So study of women in informal mining may not only document challenges, but may advocate for better policies and working conditions. So this is what is involved in advocacy or participatory perspective. So the importance of having qualitative foundations that they help us understand some philosophical foundations, and they're important because they help us guide the choices of the research design. They help us influence the data collection methods and also shape the interpretation. So question number one is asking us to, number one, qualitative researchers assume the world is made up of multiple realities. Discuss this assumption with reference to constructivist perspective and also participatory perspective, 10 marks. So we find this question later on. My main concern today is to look at the research designs. What is a research design and how does it help in research? So we have many types of research designs under qualitative and under uh, quantitative research. So what is the research design? Okay, you've passed that stage. What is a research design and what does it help us do? So a research design basically is a blueprint. It is the foundation. It is a structured plan or strategy that will help to guide the research on how the research must be conducted. So a research design will help you explain what data to collect, how to collect it, how to analyze it. So in qualitative research, the research design must be flexible and adaptive. This means that the researcher can adjust methods as new insights will emerge in the study. So the key features of research designs are number one, in qualitative research, they'll focus on human experiences. So qualitative research designs, their main aim is to help understand people's thoughts, their feelings, their beliefs, their experiences. So mainly it emphasizes on depth rather than numbers. So qualitative research designs also um, have an aspect of flexibility. Unlike quantitative research, which is somewhat rigid, qualitative will often allow changes during the study. So you discover that you may have started with a proposed research design that was this, then later on discover that no, because of this, I can use this. So you can hover around here. So researchers can refine questions to explore new ideas. Um, it also focuses on context-based understanding. So the research will consider how the environment setting is in which people live, the social and cultural, economic factors that are there. It will make use of open-ended methods where data is collected through interviews, focus groups, observations, documents, and it takes note of interpretive analysis. So data is analyzed using patterns and themes and meanings rather than using statistics. So there are several common types of research designs that are under qualitative. So sometimes deliberately, those of you will be doing your proposals. So proposals, by the way, are done at this stage. During your exams, you'll be handing over your proposals, after which your supervisors will be assigned. So your topics could be independent of your first assignment and second, depending on how you want your research to go. But what they'll be marking there again is your research questions. Are they undertaking a qualitative, a quantitative approach? They'll look at your research design. Does it marry with the questions that you have? So here you need to understand this more for exam purposes, even as you do your proposal. So there can only be a certain type of designs that fall under quantitative and qualitative. So there's what we call phenomenological uh, research design. So this research design focuses on lived experiences. It actually seeks to understand how individuals perceive a phenomenon. So phenomenological, okay, like scenery, it dwells on people's lived experiences regarding a certain particular phenomenon, an event, a situation, or a condition. The goal here mainly is to understand how people experience something and interpret and give meaning to it. So the key characteristics here are that it focuses on what individual experiences. Number two, it wants to explore the deep understanding of their perception. It is mainly subjective. It involves small and carefully selected participants who have experienced this phenomenon. Okay, and how is data collected? Through in-depth interviews. So you have a one-on-one conversation with the participant. It will allow for detailed exploration of these personal experiences. So there are narratives there are stories that are shared by participants about their experiences and may include written accounts and diaries and verbal storytelling. It may also include audio scripts where recordings or documents will capture these personal experiences. So in phenomenological research here, data is analyzed using what? Thematic analysis or phenomenological analysis, if you may want to call it. So here it involves you reading and familiarizing yourself. The researcher will transcribe multiple times to understand the data. There's a lot of identification of these statements, trying to extract the key phrases and statements that were relating to experience, and you group these into themes. It's tedious. Use in vivo to analyze this. We want to develop meanings. The researcher want to interpret the themes to review the experience. So qualitative research is quite uh, involving, all right? But it involves that. These are the analyses that are involved. So we go now to the narrative design. Okay. What is involved in the narrative research design under quality? So remember, we've talked about phenomenological. We're now going to narrative. So narrative focuses on stories and life history. Okay. Stories. So you tell me, where does Shaka's story fall under? So under narrative, it's a type in qualitative research which looks or focuses on people's stories, their life experiences, their personal histories. So it's based on the idea that individuals they make sense of their lives by telling stories about their experiences. So instead of just collecting facts, this kind of design will help researchers to understand how the event happened over time, how people interpret those events, what meanings they attach to those experiences. So the key areas of focus is that it focuses on stories and lives histories. So the main idea here is that they are stories told by individuals, and these stories may cover life journeys, important events, personal struggles. They also focus on chronological structure, time-based. So the narratives usually are organized in a sequence, past, present, and future. So here it helps us to show how these experiences develop and change over time. It also focuses on the meanings through storytelling. So here, people will use stories to explain their experiences and identities. Now, here, the researcher would want to explore and describe the events and connect these experiences and interpret their own lives. So it also has an individual-centered approach where it focuses one person or a small number of individuals in detail, thereby providing a rich, in-depth data and understanding. So now, what types of data are collected under narrative? So we have biographies, autobiographies, personal accounts, diaries, journals, letters. What are biographies? These are detailed accounts of a person's life written in by other researchers. Autobiography, these are life stories written by the individual themselves. That's a difference. All right. So we have looked at a second type is what? The narrative. Then we go to evaluation research, case study. Now, in the case study, that's where most people um, want to. Can you have a quantitative research which is a case study? Or it's always supposed to be qualitative research. So you need to be careful as you're doing your topics there to understanding, does this qualify to be a quantitative or qualitative? All right. So an evaluation research here is a type where we focus mainly on assessing how well a program or a policy is working. Okay, it's usually used by government or NGOs, those that work in the Ministry of Community Development. All right. You want to look at the impact that a FISIP has on the well-being of what? Or Jewel, the well-being of the vulnerable. Okay. You want to see whether it's effective or it's beneficial. Your main purpose is to answer questions. Is the program achieving its objectives? What is the impact? What improvements can be done? So characteristics or key themes here, they focus on effectiveness to examine whether the program, a policy is meeting the intended goals. It also looks at the practical decisions. The findings are used to support what? Decision making. So here, policymakers will decide whether to continue the program, discontinue, modify, stop it, or expand it. In the real context, it is constructed in natural setting where programs operate. So it focuses on improvement, not just about judging whether it's success or failure, but also about identifying the areas of improvement. So how is data collected? Using interviews, observations, and using documents. All right. So the analysis methods here, they include content analysis and thematic analysis. What is content analysis? You examine documents and reports and transcripts. So here the researcher will identify information that is key. In thematic analysis, you identify themes on common what? patterns across data. So it includes you reading extensively. So we're looking at what? Uh, Evaluation research. So please, at your workplaces, get to apply this kind. So we also have what we call case studies and ethnography. Okay. So what is a case study, or what is involved in a case study? What is a case study? Most of you would want to do researches based on the cases. So it's simply a qualitative research approach, which involves you having an in-depth investigation of a single case or a small number of cases within the real context. So a case can be an individual, a company leader, a community leader, an organization, a school, a company, or an event program like Jewel, FISIP, you know, Cash for Work. So the key characteristics here are that you have in-depth investigation, you focus on comprehensive analysis, you want to explore um, the case from multiple angles. It is also content specific because the case being studied is in the real life environment. You want to look at the social, the economic factors that are to be considered. You also make use of multiple data sources, which we call triangulation. Triangulation is just using the way the triangle is here a little, there a little, and there a little. So data is collected from multiple sources to improve what accuracy in sources such as interviews, observations, and documents. So it will help you have a complete and reliable picture of the case. So it has a holistic understanding. So examples of case studies are a single case study where you focus on one case in particular. You want to study um, maybe a school's performance improvement strategy. How can we improve performance if you're a teacher at Momena, a basic school? You can also have multiple case study where you involve more than one case comparison. You want to compare different schools and you see how the performance is. Perhaps there could be things that you are missing. So analysis will focus mainly on one case at a time where you're going to examine data. You look at the key themes and patterns. You can also use a cross-case analysis where you're going to use multiple cases. You're going to compare and identify similarities and differences in the patterns. So that is a case study, right? Then we'll look at ethnography. Ethnography, what is involved in ethnography and how is data collected? Ethnography from ethno. Can somebody try to explain what ethnography is? So when dealing with ethnography, yes, Anna, it's a qualitative design focusing on what? People's culture, ethnics, their behaviors, their social interactions. So here the main goal is ethnography. It's meant to understand how people live and how they interact with each other, their beliefs, their values, their norms. And researchers here spend long time within a community to gain deep and accurate understanding of their what? Their way of life. So it focuses, number one, on culture, the shared beliefs and traditions, the languages, the behavior of a group, and how culture influences how people think and act. It focuses on the natural setting. Here, research is conducted in a real life environment where participants, for instance, in a village or place community, live. So it helps to capture authentic behavior. The other key is on the research as I mentioned. Here, the researcher becomes part of the community for a period of time. You live with them, you eat with them. So it will allow you to have a deeper understanding. You build trust, you become part and parcel, you live the experience there. It has a holistic approach. So it looks at the group as a whole. It looks at the social relationship, their daily activities, their traditions, and here data is collected by participant observation, where the researcher observes and sometimes he lives with them. Okay. He attends these meetings and works with them. He takes field notes, detailed written notes and observations. There's informal interviews where there's calls or conversations with participants. Okay. There are artifacts and documents, there are natural items. You become part of the community. So the data collection methods will include thematic analysis where you identify patterns that are recurring in a certain way. There's descriptive analysis where you focus on what? Descriptions of what people do, how they do it. Okay, for instance, you want to study the informal traders in Zambian market. You spend some time observing their daily activities. So this is what happens. So we now go back to our exam question here. So we've been given a table here, the qualitative research, ethnography, historical, technological, action-based case study, evaluation. So you're being asked to identify the qualitative data analysis method. So ethnographic, what did you say was the data um, analysis method? Are we together? Don't concentrate on what you.
Yes, we are together.
Okay. So we are now, before I go to this table, just a quick, can you remember? Um, what is ethnography in qualitative research? What does it look at?
Hi, am
I
I
think
audible?
I think this is where we talked about having to study, let's say, certain cultures or social interactions.
Okay. I mean, you study certain cultures, yes. And what is involved in historical research design? For this was 25 marks. So you need to just apply what we are just talking about in the table. So we have what for each of them? Ethnographic, what type of analysis is there? Thematic and content analysis. How about historical research? What kind of analysis is there? Narrative and what? Discourse analysis. How about phenomenological? I said you can use what? Phenomenological analysis itself. Interpretive phenomenological analysis. Like case study, what type of analysis is used in case study? We use thematic analysis or case within a case or cross analysis. Evaluation, content analysis, and what? Thematic analysis. Narrative, we use the narrative analysis. Okay, so under ethnographic research, we said we are using thematic and content analysis. It focuses on you identifying the patterns and behaviors in these social interactions where data is collected from the field in grouped into themes. Historical analysis here is mainly narrative and discourse analysis. So it is used to study past events and what development events over time. So you use the narrative analysis in this case, where you organize events in chronological order. Okay, the discourse analysis there will help you understand and examine how the language is reflects historical meaning. Phenomenological, we said here we use what? Interpretive phenomenological analysis. Mainly, we are focusing on the lived lives of individuals. So IPA will help you as a researcher to interpret how these participants make sense of their experiences. Mainly, it involves you having a deep reflection, identifying the core meanings, the essence behind. Okay, action research. uses grounded theory and thematic analysis. So in here, it is used to solve real life problems whilst you're conducting the research. So grounded theory, we hope to come up with new theories, and thematic analysis, we hope to identify the patterns. Case study, I said you can use it within one case or multiple cases. We use thematic analysis where you can uh, um, do within case analysis. So we did this last week on Wednesday. So we looked at each of these cases in depth, okay? And evaluation analysis, those that were there, I've just repeated to say here you're focusing on assessing the effectiveness of certain programs. I gave an example of FSIP, Jewel, you know, you use content analysis and thematic analysis. So content analysis, you want to review the documents, the reports, and thematic analysis, you want to identify any key issues. In narrative analysis, we looked at what? These stories that are lived. You're analyzing them by sequencing them, interpreting them, and the main method here is narrative analysis. So you need to understand this. This is always coming in your section A. So a quick summary is that ethnography is mainly about what? Themes, culture. Historical, you're looking at past events, so you're using narrative and discourse. Phenomenological, you're looking at experiences, so you're looking at IPA. Action, research, you're looking at problem solving, real problems. So you use grounded theory and thematic analysis. Case study, you're looking at an in-depth case. You can use within or cross. Here you're using themes. Evaluation, you want to see the effectiveness, so you can use content and thematic. And the narrative, you're using stories. So this is uh, what we did last week. We also went ahead to look at um, this question, the steps that are taken when you are conducting qualitative research. Okay, so qualitative research analysis methods are the step-by-step method that we look at. So these notes I've already explained them, the types of analysis content. I'll send these notes in the groups so that you can read them through. So what is data collection? What is involved in data collection? So data collection in qualitative focuses on obtaining rich, detailed information. So these methods are often flexible. They allow you to have interaction with the research and the participants. And so we have what we call direct observation. When do we use direct observation? The researcher is going to observe without interacting. It is used when you want to study the behavior of a setting. Sometimes you want to study the behavior of babies. You will not use a questionnaire there. You want to see whether these babies love toys. You're going to use what? Observation method. The advantages are that what? It gives you real-time data. There's no reliance on perspective memory. Okay? The limitations are that there's observer bias and you are limited in your insight and thoughts. You may perceive something according to your own understanding because you did not get from the actual participant. There's what we call participant observation, where the researcher becomes part of the group. Okay? There's disguise and undisguised, so you act, you become part of the group. So what happens there? There are advantages and disadvantages that we have. What are the advantages of participant observation? So as you be doing your researches, the choice of the method you're going to use should be justified. So this is chapter 3 of your research, the shortest but yet most detailed chapter, because you need to justify every stage why you're using a particular method. Okay, the justification must be valid. So participant observation, the researcher will actively engage in the daily lives of the community. Unlike indirect, direct observation, here the researcher will remain a passive observer. So the key features here that the researcher is both the observer and the participant. So in this method, You use it mainly when you're using ethnographic studies, where you're exploring cultural and social phenomenon. So the researcher will record these field notes and observations. The advantages are that you're going to have what deep meaning by participating. The researcher will actually gain first-hand information because you experienced it, right? Participant. That's what our Savior did. He had to experience mankind's limitations for him to stand on behalf of mankind before the Father. So participant observation. So inside that perspective, you become part of the group. So it helps the researcher to understand the subtleties of societal norms. There's rich data. It provides detailed information that can be difficult to capture if you were to get it through interviews. The limitation is that it's time consuming. So to fully integrate into a group, you have to spend much time and effort, and there's risk of losing objectivity because being an active participant, the researcher may be too close with the participants and may fail to critically analyze the behaviors. There are also ethical concerns where the researcher must balance the involvement and social responsibility, including that informed consent, you know? So you may be in a thin line of being a deceiver. So here, the researcher will be studying, for instance, workplace culture in the SME area of Zambia. So you have to attend meetings, you have to see the activities. You may end up looking like a socio. So you are being part and parcel of the environment as if you are part of them without them knowing. Okay, so it's difficult to get consent from them. Then we also have semi-structured interviews. What are semi-structured interviews? These are flexible data collection methods where the researcher uses prepared set of open-ended questions. These open-ended questions used to guide in the questioning, they're flexible and interactive. Okay. Advantages of semi-structured interviews, um, maybe through Google Meet. That number one, the aspect of convenience. So participants and researchers can join at any location. You save time and cost. It's flexible to allow the researcher to explore new ideas or themes, okay, that may emerge in the discussion. So you may not have had um, the appetite to ask a certain question, but because of what you had, those that have watched Kenny or T one-on-one, so you have this semi kind of structured interview. So it's interactive. It promotes engagement through conversations, which will yield what? Richer data. Okay, there's documentation. So interviews can be recorded with content and may ensure that there's accurate capture of the transcription. So the limitations are that number one, could have internet challenges. So we are doing something on Google Meet or Zoom, it may fault disruptions, may experience faults or disruptions. There are also limited non-verbal cues, so like body language. If I'm having interviewing you on the phone, I may not capture all that. There are also distractions that are possible. A home environment, you are on Zoom, the baby is crying, confidentiality concerns. So ensuring privacy may be difficult if you're not in private space. So this is what we call a semi-structured interview. So focus groups. What is involved in focus groups? What are the advantages and disadvantages of focus groups? And open-ended questionnaires. So at least you need to have an idea of these ones. Um, at least they're not difficult for you to remember. What are these? Focus groups. What are focus groups? Focus groups, structured conversations. You have a moderator there. Okay, it's designed when you gather participants, you want to get views and opinions about a specific topic, maybe Chilimba. You want to find out how it has worked for women. So that interaction among will stimulate richer responses than just asking an individual. So typically you may have maybe 6 to 12 participants. You may have a trained moderator who will guide the discussion with the preset questions. So the discussion will be recorded audio, video, supplemented by field notes. So it's here to allow people to react to each other's comments. The advantages are that what? You're going to have divergent views or opinions. It is interactive. It stimulates memory and reflection. Sometimes when you forget something, you recall from what somebody may mention. Okay, it's efficient when it comes to data collection. The limitations are that some of the dominant participants talk too much. It will prevent the other quieter ones from talking. It has group bias, so participants may be influenced by peer pressure. So there could be a leader somewhere, so the responses may not be as genuine. There is also confidentiality risk, so some sensitive information may not be discussed openly in a group. Then also may be moderator dependent because the quality may actually be determined by how a person is moderating them. Are we together? So that is on focus groups. And we also have open-ended questionnaires. What are open-ended questionnaires? You've used open-ended questionnaires before. What are they? These are questionnaires that allow a person to express themselves. You don't have closed options. They are open-ended in nature where somebody can respond to the question in their own words rather than you predefining the options that you would want them to respond to. So this method is usually there to explore attitudes and perceptions. The key features are that it's flexible, it allows people to respond, it can be distributed in multiple formats, printed online, and the responses can be analyzed qualitatively through coding or thematic analysis or categorization. The advantages are they give you a wide reach, can be distributed to participants on a wide reach. Okay. You can also uh, be cost effective because you can use an online or email. There's anonymity, participants can feel free to express themselves without writing their names. There's standardization where all participants will respond to the same questions. So the limitations that you may have low response rates because participants will ignore questions that may feel to write. There's limited depth there compared to um, the richness of data when you're talking or interviewed. There could be also misinterpretation because at the researcher present, you may misinterpret what they meant. It's also time consuming. For instance, you're studying climate change in Osaka and you want to distribute open-ended questionnaires. Okay, for me personally, I hate ended because they're time consuming. Now, what determines the best choice when you're choosing um, the right qualitative method? So when you're selecting the appropriate qualitative data collection method, what should you consider to ensure that your data is reliable, it is valid, it is meaningful? Okay. There are things that you must consider. Number one should depend on uh, research objectives, the target population, and the resources available. So research objectives must be SMART, okay? Specific, measurable, attainable, RS what? Realistic and time bound. The target population, it must be accessible, the literacy levels and willingness of the participant to engage. The resource available, like the money, the personnel, the technical tools. Okay. The other method, the characteristics is the sensitivity of the topics. Some topics are political. So open-ended questionnaires may questionnaires may not work in that nature. Okay. So let's go to our exam questions, maybe at that juncture. So this is 25 marks. Question reads, there are a variety of methods of data collection in qualitative, including observations, textual, interviews. However, the most common methods used, particularly in humanities and social science, are interviews, focus group, and discussion. They are required from the forerunning, briefly outline step-by-step procedures indicating chronological sequences, events. Step one, you would take for the following qualitative direct observations. What is involved? Direct participant observations, semi-structured um, interviews, focus discussions, researcher administered open-ended questionnaires. So that is 25 marks. Okay. So can somebody try the first one? This question has appeared more than enough times. So can somebody try? What are the step-by-step methods from what I've explained? So direct observations involve the researcher observing and recording the behavior in a natural setting without what? Participating. So here the researcher will remain detached. So you can use a checklist, field notes, um, um, you can use video recording. So you can have an observation classroom. Can you get me? Am I clear? Am I audible?
Yes.
We can
Yes.
hear
Yes,
you.
you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're using observation, step one, number one, you can define your focus. So you decide exactly what patterns or events you want to observe. Number two, you choose a setting, whether you want a natural setting, it can be a classroom or a clinic. Step three, you need to decide the role. You can either remain completely an observer where you do not participate, or you can put cameras. Step four, you need to develop an observation tool. You prepare a checklist, you prepare field notes, a template, or time interval where you're going to monitor these behaviors. Step five, you need to gain access or ethics approval. So you may need to get permission maybe from the shopkeeper to install what? Um, a camera. Step six, pilot observation. You can conduct a trial to see whether the tools are going to work. Step seven, you conduct the observation. Okay, you record the behavior systematically. Step eight, you take detailed notes. You write the descriptions of what happened. And lastly, you exit respectively. Participant observation step by step. How do we conduct that? Number one, identify the group that you want to choose. So you choose a group that is related to your study. Is the Chilimba congregation? Step two, you gain entry. You need to, because this participant observation, you need to build rapport with these participants. So you explain your purpose. Step three, you choose what? The participation level. You can either be full participant or part participant. Step four, you learn the group norms. Initially, you need to observe, you record, you learn their language and routines. Step five, you need to begin to be what? An active participant. You engage in their daily activities. Okay. If it's Chilimba, you go part, if it's a daily thing. Step six, you jot notes, write a brief memory triggers. Step five, you fill in field notes. So every evening you expand on those notes that you are jotting quickly. Then step eight, you record insider perspectives there. So I'm just giving you, you may summarize them into 5 steps or 6 steps, but at least they should make sense. For a Google Meet, what steps do you think you would take? Number one, first, you develop your interview guide. You create these open-ended questions, the probing questions. Tell me about. Can you answer, for instance? Step two, you recruit the participants using email or WhatsApp, all right, on Unilas groups. Step three, you schedule what? Interviews. You can use Google Scholar, Zoom, okay, links, and you set the clear instructions. Step four, you obtain digital consent. So you can share an informed consent form via email or Google form typed. Step five, you need to test the technology, check the camera, microphone. Step five, you need to maybe begin the interview. You greet the participant, affirm consent, and start the recording. Step six, you follow the interview guide. You ask the questions and the probing questions. Step eight, record and take notes. Step nine, you manage disruptions if internet fails or phone call or interrupts whilst you're doing that. And Step 10, you close the interview, you thank the participant. And you're dealing with focus groups. Step 1, you define your objectives, what topics you're going to discuss. For instance, is what? Um, Chilimba. Step 2, you develop moderator guide. So you will prepare some opening transition key questions. Step 3, you recruit your participants. Could be 10 or 6 to 10 homogeneous groups. Homogeneous, we mean similar background. Step 4, you arrange a venue, a natural setting. Step 5, you assign roles. Who is the moderator? Who is the assistant? Step 6, you conduct the session. You welcome the participants and obtain consent. Step 7, you start with an icebreaker. Introduce yourself, favorite, you know. Step 8, you guide the discussion. So these steps are just a summary of what I was just discussing in a nutshell. So this was carrying about 25 marks. Dr. Lumbwe loves succinct responses, so don't beat about the bush. Summarize them in a way you can put 5 points of each of them. Hurry together. So this is where we end in today's session on our qualitative. So tomorrow is a holiday. We'll look at the quantitative aspect where we'll discuss validity, how to come up with a conceptual framework, the variables, independent and dependent variables, how to come up with a topic just from the conceptual framework and the key constructs that are there. So this is, I think, what we were covering that other week. So I just wanted to include these ones who missed out on a number of these topics. Let's say any questions you can ask now. So the pamphlets are ready. I separated them. There's qualitative and one which has mixed. So basically, they also have just some small notes just to help guide on some of these topics. So this course, if taken lightly, you can fail. You need to understand that you need to put in effort. So at this stage where you reach, it's not only about passing, it's about acing. You may have a GPA of 2.4, 2.44, 2.43, and you fail to graduate and you need to look for another course. So I usually emphasize students, you put in your best. Where you need to get an A, get it, because it will help improve your credit score. Okay? Put in your best in all courses, regardless. This is for your own uh, this course it's just too involving. There's research, it's just a whole lot of an expense as well. So please, you're better off having to bank the theoretical part of it. Unless there are any questions.